Okay, going back to Volume 2 of my DC Horror Universe, we have Batman One Bad Day number 1. This is a Riddler origin story.
Batman One Bad Day number 1, Riddler, the first question. The first thing Edward Nashton ever learned about the world was that the truth didn't matter. Not really. Not if the person telling the story was stronger than you. Not if they were louder. Not if they were the one holding the belt. Edward learned that lesson before he was 10 years old. The apartment smelled like cheap alcohol and cigarette smoke. The walls were stained yellow from years of neglect. Outside, the sounds of Gotham City drifted in through cracked windows, sirens, shouting engines, the restless noise of a city that never slept. Edward sat on the floor with a book in his lap, a puzzle book. He traced the shapes with his finger, triangles, squares, patterns. He loved patterns. Patterns made sense. The world didn't. The door slammed open. Edward froze. His father stumbled into the apartment. Still up, the man growled. Edward quickly closed the book. Yes, sir. His father's eyes were bloodshot. He smelled like whiskey and rage. What's that? Nothing. Don't lie to me. Edward slowly held up the book. His father snatched it away. What's this garbage? Puzzles, Edward said quietly. His father flipped through the pages, confused, then annoyed, then angry. You think you're smarter than everyone else? Edward shook his head. No, sir. But that wasn't true. Even then, Edward knew things other people didn't. He saw patterns they missed. He understood the logic behind things others couldn't figure out. That made people uncomfortable, especially his father. The school announced the competition a week later, a puzzle contest. Solve the riddle faster than anyone else, win a prize. Edward felt something warm spark inside his chest. He loved puzzles. He practiced them constantly. But this contest, it was different. This one mattered. The winner would receive a book of riddles. Edward wanted that book more than anything. There was only one problem. The puzzle itself was kept locked in the principal's office. Edward stood outside the school late that night, staring at the windows. The building was dark, empty, quiet. The answer came to him immediately. He climbed through the window. Inside the school, the hallways smelled like chalk dust and floor polish. Edward's footsteps echoed softly. He found the principal's office easily, because he knew exactly where it was. His father worked there. The key was in the desk. Edward opened the drawer, found the puzzle sheet, and began practicing. Over and over. He studied every angle, every possibility, every solution, until he could solve it instantly. By the time morning came, Edward Nashton knew the answer. The competition lasted less than a minute. The teacher read the puzzle. Students scribbled furiously. Edward calmly wrote the solution. When the teacher collected the papers, Edward already knew the result. The teacher smiled later that afternoon. Congratulations, Edward. You solved it faster than anyone. Edward felt something he had never felt before. Pride. The prize was a thick green book filled with riddles. He held it carefully like it was something fragile, something precious. That feeling didn't last long. His father found out. The beating came that night. You cheated. I didn't. The belt cracked across Edward's back. You think you're smarter than me? Edward tried to explain, tried to tell the truth, but the truth didn't matter. Not in that apartment, not with that man. That night, Edward learned something important. People hated being proven wrong, and they hated being outsmarted even more. But puzzles didn't lie. Puzzles had answers, clear answers, logical answers. Edward decided something that night. He would dedicate his life to riddles, to questions, to answers. And someday, everyone would see how smart he really was. Years passed. Edward grew older, smarter. His teachers noticed immediately. Test scores came easily, too easily. But every success came with consequences at home. His father never believed him. Every achievement meant another accusation, another beating, another lecture about cheating. Edward stopped arguing. It didn't matter anyway. The truth never mattered to people like his father. But logic mattered, and Edward had logic. When he finally turned 18, he left home without saying goodbye. He didn't take much, just a suitcase. And the green riddle book. The circus arrived in Gotham during the summer. Bright lights, music, crowds, color. Edward watched from the outside at first. The place fascinated him. Carnival games were puzzles disguised as entertainment. Throw the ring, hit the target, guess the number. But Edward saw the trick behind every single one. Every angle, every rigged mechanism, every mathematical probability. It was almost insulting how easy it all was. The carnival owner noticed him watching. "You want a job, kid?" Edward adjusted his glasses. "What kind of job?" "Game booth." Edward smiled slightly. "Perfect." Working the carnival games was simple, too simple. Edward quickly realized something. People didn't actually want to win. They wanted to believe they could win. And Edward could give them that illusion. "Step right up." He stood behind the booth holding a stack of rings. "3 rings for $5. Win the giant prize." People lined up eagerly. Edward watched them carefully, studying, analyzing, predicting. He adjusted the rings just enough to make success almost impossible, but not completely impossible, just enough to keep them trying. A man stepped up. "Bet I can win that teddy bear." Edward smiled. "Of course you can." The man threw the ring, missed. Edward already knew he would. Almost. Another throw. Missed again. Close. The man kept trying, money piling up. Edward felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just boredom. People were predictable. Too predictable. Eventually, Edward realized something. Cheating at carnival games was easy, but it wasn't interesting. It wasn't challenging. It wasn't fun. He needed something better, something smarter, something worthy of his intellect. That was the moment Edward Nashton asked himself the most important question of his life. If carnival games were too easy, then who in Gotham was actually worth challenging? The answer came to him immediately. The man in the shadows. The man solving crimes no one else could. The man everyone in Gotham whispered about. Batman. Edward smiled slowly behind the carnival booth. For the first time in years, he felt excited again. Because if Gotham had a great detective, then Gotham needed a great riddle. And Edward Nashton was about to become the man who asked it. The carnival lights flickered above him, crowds laughed, games continued. But Edward wasn't thinking about the carnival anymore. He was thinking about the next question, and the man who would have to answer it.
This shotgun is freaking sick. Today's first gun of the year. Got some cool designs on it. I don't know if it's picking up on the camera. But that, we got all sorts of fishing stuff. We got bullets. We got a little baby crown. Uh-oh, you never know. We got shopping carts, pieces of van. It was a great day. We're gonna see if we can find any treasures throughout these canals in Florida. And hopefully, we'll find some cool stuff.